Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me too much. Let me get everything positioned here a little bit. Need to move that over just a touch.
Huh. I just got a notification.
Probably some guy.
Yeah, from some weird freak on something called Hard Rock University.
That's that guy who wants to sleep with you, right?
Uh-huh.
I thought so. Well, howdy, folks. All two of you so far, according to that. Hi, Chris. Oh, yeah. Well, people think meat comes from the grocery store. It's pretty hilarious. Let's have electric cars. Where are you going to get the electricity to charge them? From the outlet? Yeah. Oh, do the math. It's amazing how life changes when you do the math. Oh, good, Chris. Uh, Eva seems satisfied with this. So basically, hamburger, some onions, some bacon, green enchilada sauce, a little green taco sauce, a little salsa,
Cauliflower rice.
cauliflower rice, or riced cauliflower.
And cheese.
Yeah, well, I say kids have not been trained properly. We can all see that. Uh, well, if everyone had been given a good education in reality 101, we'd be in a lot less trouble. Oh, dearie. Anyhow, um, oh, yeah, that's why we're living longer and healthier. Yeah, all that pollution. Uh, let's see. Uh, rock, I was going to show you a rock, but I forgot to get the rock to show Rock about the rock. Um, it had the kind of lamellar, I forget, but anyhow, plated sort of looking structures in it. And we had a short but busy 2-day work week on the weekend here. Um, yeah, well, on, in, around, yeah. So um, Saturday we put some more stakes out and then headed up to the spot there and started doing some sampling. And unfortunately, as we were getting ready to haul the last couple of loads of samples and stuff, the quad decided to strip a hub on the rear axle, so we only had one rear wheel pushing. So we had to pretty much call it off and come back without some of the. And you had a couple quartz samples from another spot that would have been interesting, etc. So busy, busy, busy. In addition, I've got to go over to Lauren's shop, see if I can find the other movable jaw wear plate. From Cedro Woolly, wow, I've sold kettle corn in Cedro Woolly, Chad. um, did you run into us there, Wild West Kettle Corn, 10 years ago or so? Let's see, that'll be longer than that now. Probably about 15 years at this point.
I don't think
somewhere around there.
Years,
He says yes, he did. Yep. Well, that's us. Having fun, doing interesting stuff.
I did.
Anyhow, so yeah, we didn't get all the samples we wanted, but we're doing okay. And then we're doing a lot of work out at the ranch, um, testing this mystery dump material, and it's definitely got a lot more coarser gold in it. And that wasn't kind of a double Um, it does have more, and it is coarser. And anyhow, we're trying the um, Infinity Prospecting VDR mat, and they sent us a little mini sluice too, which is coming very handy. The 8-inch wide mat didn't get a fair test the last time we dumped the tank, and the little micro sluice was clearly capturing larger particles of gold in the little sawtooth mat at the top. And
It also has some really fine stuff.
I'm getting there, little one. I don't know if you've ever seen VDR mat. This little micro sluice, I don't know, about 3 inches by 30 inches, I'm thinking. And up top it has some fine sawtooth mat. And then it has these round wells. Actually, I think there's 3. It's got kind of a spiral thing in them. And it sets up a vortex, and then every so often, like every 2 or 3, then there's a trough, and then more, kind of like this. And it did not get a fair test because we didn't grind the ore fine enough, I'm sure, to do a good job of liberation. The Studenroth mill was set up for 14 mesh minus, 100% passing 14 mesh minus, which is okay for leaching only. But for mineral liberation, you want to get a finer grind than that, typically somewhere between 50 and 200 mesh. And the only way to find out is to just test it. But anyhow, this here, when I pan the heads and pan the tailings, I'd say we're getting around 80% recovery of the pannable gold. Now, samples are on their way to Hittle for assay. We'll get better numbers in a week or so. By next week, we should have numbers on that. But it seemed to do a pretty good job. Hello, Mary Lynn. And so this looks like it's doing pretty good. The finest particles we saw in quantity were finer than 500 mesh, probably about 500 to 600 mesh, thousandth of an inch, some a little smaller, but that seemed to be the bottom side. Now, how much there is that is smaller than that, we don't know. Okay. So it's hard to tell. That's why I'm saying it looks like we're getting about 80% recovery of the pannable free gold in this thing with a single pass. So that's not too bad. The other thing is we were not using water. We were using Eco Gold X solution. So here's my evil thought process for maximum simplicity. Now, you can use more complex gravity separations than a sluice that are probably going to give you better recovery. But the question becomes, at what point is that recovery unimportant if you're also doing a leaching circuit? So here's my evil plan. And we got to test all this to make sure it works. First of all, you got your jaw crusher. Okay? And your rocks go into the jaw. Actually, I should have done it this way. And they come out fine. From here, put it into one of my impact mills. I make this bigger, for gosh sakes. Ugh. Okay, you guys are trying to see all the way from over there. So we got a jaw crusher. Big rocks into little rocks. That goes into one of my impact mills and comes out as a powder in an airstream, finally classified, goes to a cyclone, then gets wetted, comes down through a sluice, and then out onto the pad. Now, this assumes a large number of things which aren't proven at this time. But my impact mill will give us like 95% passing 60 mesh. Okay? So much finer grind than the Stutenroth is now. And then by putting solution in, then this can go to a pond and be recirculated. So this would pulverize it, get us a little elevation so we can mix it with solution, get it on the sluice, and then now you can replace this with a jig, with a table, with a trip concentrator, with all kinds of different things. But a sluice is simple because it has no moving parts. I'm a big fan of no moving parts. If this will do the job and get us real good recoveries on the gold down to 200 or 300 mesh, then the pad can get the rest, I believe. We'll be doing tests. Now, one of the things that's interesting with this particular ore, we should probably see about getting a little microscope, a little USB microscope or something, little one, so that we can take pictures so we can show people. The various no, not copper and mercury. I'll get to that in just a second. What is the pad? The pad is a large area covered with a sheet of plastic with berms on the side so that when you dump all that, the mud stays on top and the solution comes out underneath. If you look back through some of my other videos, you'll see the little test pad we have out at the ranch. That's my thought, Chris. I say we'll just have to see what the parameters are and go for that. So the particles that we're getting, some of them are bright buttery yellow, like you expect gold to be. Some are a washed out yellow, like you'd expect, say, electrum to be. Some are a very bright, shiny silver color. Okay? These are all coming from the same sample. Chris was suggesting it could be there's some tellurides in there. Not familiar with any tellurides around here, but what the heck? We'll need to do some testing. Tungsten grains? I don't think so. Not that familiar with tungsten, but I think tungsten is generally found in oxidized type minerals, not in the metallic form. I mean, some of the stuff looks like it's been rhodium plated. It's so bright, white, and shiny. It's ridiculous. So let's say I hear that some telluride minerals can be that bright white. We might have some platinum group, although I doubt it. That's kind of I think it could be electrum that just has a lot more silver than others. Yeah, so I was thinking of putting in multiple mats. First of all, you need a wider sluice for the at least 200 pounds an hour. Now, my little 6-inch bob mill runs at about 150, 175 pounds an hour. I'd like to consider building a bigger one this winter. Use the one I got as a testing. It's broken right now, but I think we could get it back operational pretty quick. The frame cracked, and I think we could get it straight, weld it up, weld on some fish plates without too much trouble. Well, what was his throughput per hour, Jean-Francois? And as I say, if we're using the Eco Goldex, which we're set up to use, the finer the gold, the less we need to worry about gravity recovering the small particles. The bigger particles are running larger than 50 mesh right now. There's a lot of particles in the 100 mesh range. Okay, well, they make Chris says Gesundheit. They make an 8-inch mat, so that would be easy enough to do. We got a piece of 8-inch mat already. I was thinking like 3 pieces of 8-inch mat, and on a regular basis, you make sure you're either putting fresh solution or water through the system so you can see what's going on and look at the indicator mat on the sections on the stuff below. And when the indicator mat, wherever you decide, is starting to show, like I would think by the time it gets to the indicator mat on the 3rd mat, you want to pull the first mat, move everything up, clean the first mat out and put it back at the bottom. I believe it is, John. It's German. And so by constantly doing that, I say, I'm not sure how often you'd have to check it. We did a 100-pound test in like a 3-inch wide sluice. And I don't know, have some, what the reason for what little bit got through is. Did basically it load? Did it need a little bit longer, or whatever? But these things can be determined by testing, and then you do it by rule of thumb after that. But if we can get all the 200 mesh plus material in the sluice, then the 200 mesh minus ought to dissolve in the Eco Goldex fairly easily. I think we can probably get down to 300 mesh pretty good in this matting. So that's the tentative plan. I've got a 6-inch mill right now. If we went to a 10-inch mill and things scaled up in a linear manner, that would be an increase of 80% from 6 times 1.8. About 250, 300 pounds an hour. And the nice thing about my mill is that once it's in the mill, you never touch it again. You don't mess with it. It impacts, it classifies, it blows, it gets wetted. It would run through the thing and then theoretically out onto the pad. That would be the theory. Again, all of these steps have to be tested first, but we're just in the beginning stages. Um, Pretty sure we didn't get a good enough grind on it, but that allows us to take the tailings that we currently have from this process here and screen those to different sizes, and then assay those different sizes and pan those sizes too, because if we got 100 mesh gold in the 100 mesh fraction, well, that's not the way it's supposed to work. We're supposed to be getting that 100 mesh gold. But in my impact mill, you have to re-hard face the edges of the wear plates and the wear plates on the impactor, the rotor, and the wear plates inside here. As I recall, about every ton or thereabouts, it takes approximately 30 minutes to change them all out. And it takes approximately $10 of hard facing to retouch the worn surfaces. So figure it all out, you're probably looking in the $20 a ton, $30 a ton range. You also got fuel because we're using a gas engine. So it's not terribly expensive. The mill I designed specifically so that the wearer is focused on certain edges of things that can be easily hard faced, and therefore, instead of wearing everything out, you just wear the hard facing out, retouch the hard facing, and you're back in business. The plates, the rotor has 16 bolts that hold the plates on. The cover is another 4 bolts. We're now up to 20 bolts. You have 8 plates inside, each with 1 bolt. So we got 28 bolts that hold all of those parts in. So doing it in 30 minutes seems reasonable without too much trouble. I mean, you'd want an impact or something, but heck, you can get with that. So you need a weld. To build the mill, it can be done in an ordinary crude welding shop. Doesn't need a whole lot of machine tooling or anything like that. Just needs a good welder fabricator. To retouch the hard facing, yes, you would need a welder. A basic, you can do it either way, Jean-Francois. A burr grinder or a ball mill. Now, burr grinder, but that, do you mean a disc grinder that has 2 flat plates with kind of ridges that grind against each other like a flour mill? And that is for fairly low throughputs. It's very good for laboratory work because it works well on small samples. Then if you pop it open, you clean it very thoroughly, pretty easily. Ball mills come in every size, okay? For the kind of throughput that I'm getting, you need a pretty heavy, expensive mill. Anyone have a number for 150 pounds an hour through a ball mill? I'm not that familiar. Well, that must be the conveyor belting. Yeah, I say disc grinders are very good for laboratory scale stuff, not for production scale. They got a fair amount of wear. Impact mills also have a fair amount of wear, but they tend to have a much higher throughput than a disc grinder would. Ball mills have less wear and can have a lower energy consumption, which quite often makes the difference in a larger operation. An impact mill of the two is a lot lighter for what it does. 150 pounds per hour. Let's see. 150 times 8, 1,200. Match of 2 tons per day. Well, if you're running 24 hours, you get up there. Say, that's why I want to go with like a, say, I got a 6-inch wide mill. I'm thinking of building a 10-inch wide mill. And just make it a lot more robust and everything. But like my 150 pound an hour mill is easy for one guy to move by himself, no problem. And 150 pounds per hour ball mill, I think would, I don't know, 500 or 1,000 pounds. What do you think, Chris? Any idea? On larger scales, ball mills are extremely popular because they're very efficient in terms of wear rate, dollars per ton per hour, energy costs, dollars per ton per hour.
Oh man, I just funny.
24 to 26 millimeter PE polyethylene, gold rush grass sluice mat, gold vortex matting. Interesting. So, I say that's kind of my concept there. Hey, honey bunny. So, we'll be doing all these tests over the next month or so when we're not up in the hills getting more material and staking claims and taking samples. And okay, let's see. Control C. Sounds almost like an indoor-outdoor carpet. Control V. See that now the Dream mat is more of a vortex mat. It doesn't look like grass. I see Dream mat and the Devon Gold VDR. We got the VDR is what we have right now. Okay. There we go. Yeah, and basically it's like an artificial turf sort of thing. And I'm not familiar with using them, so I have no opinion. But yeah, essentially it looks like artificial turf sort of thing. And there you go, Rock. It's also going to depend, Jean-Francois, on the particular ore. One thing I like about this VDR mat is that it has a very low amount of concentrates at the end of the day. This little mini sluice, I don't know, had less than a cup of concentrates when we were done with 100 pounds.
I still can't get over just how small the gold is today.
And it was, I say, it was catching down to 500 mesh. We don't know how much it was losing at 500 mesh. But from the panning I did of the tailings, I would say not much. The problem with using a sluice for non-gold materials is basically how much can you gather before it gets plugged up and you start losing, And as such, a more steady state process like a table starts making more and more sense, the more, the physical quantity of what you're getting goes up. For example, if you had something that was running 5% heavy minerals that you were trying to concentrate, your sluice is going to plug up pretty quickly. Whereas 32 by 3 foot, yeah, how much is that going to weigh, Chris? I mean, that's going to be, with a load of balls in it, at least 500 pounds, maybe more like 1,000 or two. Something like miner's moss on a belt would do that kind of a job better. I would agree with you, Honey Bunny. If you can make the transition from below the feed point to above it smooth enough that you're not kicking loose things. And as I say, Chris says, there's jigs that are designed to do that too. Yeah, Jean-Francois, that could work if you got good fluidization. The difficulty with vibration is getting the amplitude and frequency and such right so that you get fluidization as opposed to solidification. You can get both. So that's where you have to get things. Jigs are the way to go. You could also probably use a table if you were concentrating heavy minerals without too much trouble. So there's a variety of ways to do it. It's all ore dependent as usual. But I'm thinking that the combination of a fairly simple but effective sluicing system or something to catch the coarse gold combined with the Eco Goldex to deal with the really fine gold might make a pretty versatile and effective system. Not sure. Got to do some testing, but that's my thought. And I also really like my impact mill simply because once you throw it in, it classifies and it sends it down the line with no further equipment, moving parts, or intervention required, which is nice. So the Stutenroth, the problem is it's kind of a one-shot through. You wind up with a bunch of oversize. You got to screen it and then recirculate. And that, that's just one of those things that, you check and see what happens. Here's the way to go, honey. To screen at the bottom. That's what I'm trying to avoid, Honey Bunny, on the crushing part. That's where my mill doesn't have oversize to speak of. Non-free mill can use the Eco. I see no reason why you couldn't theoretically use the Eco Goldex to do a solution extraction on your tailings or whatever after a gravity concentration to see how much gold is in there. You also have to remember, though, that whatever you're using, it's gold extractable by this method. For example, if you used Eco Goldex, you didn't grind it fine enough and you had crystal locked gold in a non-porous matrix, you're not going to get it. If you have larger gold, we did some testing And that's my thought, Chris. Mine's much lighter. As I say, one guy can move it easily. The um, the Eco Goldex, we took some about 150 mesh particles, put it on the shelf in a beaker, or was it a beaker or watch glass, or what was it? Probably a beaker with a watch glass over there. Okay. And to see what the dissolution time was. And it had pretty well disappeared in, what was it, 8 or 9 days?
Yeah, I believe so.
See, now that was with no agitation, but on the other hand, it was just completely surrounded by solution. There was no solid particles laying next to it inhibiting the solution contact. My assumption is if it'll do it in a beaker, it'll do it on a pad, maybe just a little slower. I'm not sure if those are big enough to do a good job. Hi, intern. I have no clue, intern. The potential negatives to over grinding are a couple, honey bunny. Number one, if you're using an end discharge ball mill, which means that you have just a cylinder with a hole in each end, the trunnion bearings, the axle basically is hollow, and you feed ore and water in one end, and the ground ore and water comes out the other end. Let me show this here. There are several potential problems with an end discharge ball mill. Okay, here you have the mill itself. Here you have a feed end and a discharge end. Here are your bearings right here that support the mill. And then you have a drive mechanism which just turns the whole thing. Now, you have these balls in here, and as the mill, well, they all tumble and smash and all that other stuff. But in order to get out of the mill, it's got to be able to get up and over that. The denser the material, the finer it has to be ground before it can do that. So if you're doing a gravity separation, your gold will get ground finer than your silica. You basically, as soon as the settling velocity reaches a certain value, as it gets ground down, it'll get taken out of here. So the gold tends to stay there until it's beat to a pulp, which is okay if you're using solution, not okay if you're going to go gravity. The other problem is the gold tends to just stay in here. It gets behind the wear plates and stuff like that. If any of you ever come across a ball mill that's been used in a gold mining operation and has not been cleaned out and they're selling it for scrap metal prices, buy it, remove the wear plates, clean it thoroughly with a wire brush, recover the gold that's stuck in there, and then sell the materials for scrap iron prices. So, as I say, that's the negatives of a ball mill. If you're using something where you want the settling velocity approximately the same, such as a flotation operation, they work beautifully. Okay. If you're looking for recovering gold, this can be a gold trap. Okay. Yeah, I say that's just, there's a reason ball mills are popular. They're efficient. Yep. Jules. Yeah, that can happen. Well, that's what I'm saying. If you just got an old mill that's sitting there, I know where there is one over here at the old Comet mine sitting there. And if you found the owner and you said, "Hey, do you want to sell that ball mill?" And they're like, "Well, it's pay me $1,000 or whatever for scrap metal prices." It might work out just fine. As it's just one of those things you have to be aware of. Down at the American Girl mine, they had a mill. As far as I know, they hadn't designed a gravity circuit in to begin with. Hey, Red Wing. And when they shortly after they
strong hands to rip that wire.
After they commissioned it, well, if I had a pair of scissors, I could open the scissors container, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my thought.
Anyhow, shortly after they commissioned it, they found out they were having some plugging in some areas. And what was happening was the fine gold was just settling in a low velocity.
Here's your pencils.
Okay. The low velocity section of the plumbing. And the guys who had to go clean that out just had to walk away with 25% gold. Good for him, Jean-Francois. And yeah, pretty much, honey bunny.
Wow.
Yeah, those are pretty heavy duty.
Kitchen.
So it all depends on what they're putting through it, Jean-Francois. But you always want to check. Yep. You hit one that's good, you'll make a lot of money. Well, honey bunny, I'll probably have to send you a sample so you can see what it looks like. But no, gold settles so easily that it can really surprise people. And that it did there. So last I heard, I think they put in a gravity circuit, huh? And yeah, that just, they had no idea. Of course, the guy who was in charge of the mill wasn't a gravity specialist, I know such charts exist, Jean-Francois. I had one at one time. Where did I put? Just a second while I look. Somewhere, because I found those the other day. What happened with my ASAPs? There it is. I think that's it right there. Oh, yeah. There we go. You mean kind of like that, Jean-Francois? Let me go ahead and you can mark word 44 and 44 seconds. You should be able to look that back up on your on the replay. And basically it's the settling velocity and the spherical diameter would be up here. Okay? So obviously as it gets bigger, it drops faster. These are different curves depending on how flat the gold is. For example, FF0 means it's a sphere. FF5 means it's 5 times wider in one dimension than the other. FF20 would be 20 times. And then the lowest curve is silicon dioxide, quartz. So that gives you an idea of how the different particle sizes and shapes will affect the settling velocities. Let's see. Let me go back and check. Okay. Rock says his little sister and I cleaned out an old ball mill, which led to 3 shaker tables and 3.5 ounces of gold.
Wow.
Let's see. Sounds probably about right there, Jean-Francois. It's surprising how much stuff isn't easily found. Yep. The image is rather fuzzy. What's that document reference for that chart? I don't know. This particular one was from the Society for Advancement, the American Society for Applied Technology, ASAT. Walt Lashley, he's dead. And, oh, there's one chart. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, there's the one I did. Get ready for another screen capture. That's at 4747. Wow, I'm on a roll. And that is extrapolation of settling velocities and transport flow velocities. Basically, how fast a flow does it take to keep it suspended? And here's another chart. Graph of text example. Okay, so that's just a particular example. But instantaneous velocities in centimeters per second. Sluice design criteria charts based on starting flow velocity of 0. Okay. This tells you how fast your water is going at different gradients. And that's at 4848. Damn. There must be something there. Let's see. What else we got? Anyhow. Using rocks to break rocks. Well, use an autogenous grinding mill. Okay. Use larger rocks of the same stuff to break smaller rocks of the same stuff. Check my email and send that to Lars. Let's see. What do we got? Inbox. Chris Georgie. Okay. Let's see. Forward. There you go. Sent, Chris. Just a second. Let me reply to this. Sure. Okay, so I got that, and that can just disappear. Thinking. Hey, Tricky, how's it going? No, when it comes to the square wheels, I read a science fiction story once. It was actually a fantasy. And the guy says, "Why don't you use round wheels?" Says, "How would you park on a hill?" So, anyhow, I don't even know where I'm at now. So, say we're gonna try to define these parameters with a little bit of precision and go from there. Um, Clearly, the particle sizes in the tailings were substantially smaller than the particle sizes in the heads, about half, the maximum diameter, and there's a lot fewer of them. So we'll have to see how it all works out. But I think that with a properly set up sluice and a long enough sluice, you might get pretty darn good recoveries of the liberated gold down to 3, 4, 500 mesh, somewhere in that area. And then after that, the solution does its thing. Things are going pretty good here, Tiki. Eva fell down this weekend. What'd you do? Trip on a rock or something there? Is that what happened?
I believe so.
Okay. Anyhow, she went down, not too bad, but she bruised herself a little bit. And so we'll just have to get back up there and do our thing. But she's a little sore, but not bad at all. And she helped on setting those stakes. Yeah, she's okay, Tricky. She's a little sore is all. Nothing, no real injury, just a couple little bruises. Correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So, aside from that, and just my knees were getting pretty sore that first day, climbing up and down those hills. I get really, really tired about it. You take vitamin D3 and K7. Am I taking D3 and K7, little one?
You're getting plenty of K's from your food. You're taking D3, of course.
Taking D3, she says I'm getting plenty of K's from my food. No, the hardest thing about falling down is the sudden stop. And anyhow, but she's doing okay. And she got, how many samples did you get this weekend?
14 in batch plus the bulk.
Yeah, which we couldn't recover because the quad broke. Yeah, so she got 14 soil samples.
But the bulk rock sample that's waiting there is 100 pounds.
Oh yeah, she also got some quartz from a different spot. We're gonna crush that up and test it. I think my other jaw plate is over at Lauren's house. So I'm going to have to go on over there. What's the difference of a guy falling from the 10th floor and one from the first floor? The first one says, ah, plop. Oh, dearie. The second one says, plop. Ah! Not bad. Not bad. So, yeah, we had fun getting that quad back to camp with only one drive wheel. But we managed it. Eva gave me the clue I needed to rearrange things to where we had the vehicle and the weight and distribution and everything to where I could get going. Once I got moving, I didn't stop till I was on shallower terrain with good solid traction. Then we carried all the necessary stuff up the hill about 100 yards and came back to camp, called it a weekend. Which was good because by the time I got out the ranch, got everything unloaded, got the quad back on the trailer, and got it back over to the house, it was after sunset. Sun's going down earlier nowadays. Do you have a recommendation on transmission and drivetrain for the most reliable quad? I do not, but I know some people who probably could. Question is, when you say quad, are you talking a ride on top with handlebars or a side by side with a steering wheel or whatever? And Rock Butcher may have some input on this because he's, used them a lot more than me. I've only used one ride on top. I can ask. Best quad for Jean-Francois. And are you looking new or used or whatever? Yeah, I would imagine, Jean-Francois, side-by-sides are small vehicles. Quads are wide motorcycles, so to speak. They don't fall over very. You were giving a Chinese-made quad, no name on it, no way to find new or used parts for it. If you give me the details, I might be able to find that out for you, honey bunny. Send me an email, and I can find out. My brother gave me his old quad. Apparently, it has an electric shifter on it that has failed, and I'll need to replace that, preferably with a mechanical shifter. Yeah, that'll work. The instruction manual's in Chinese. Yeah, the one I'm driving is a Yamaha Moto 4, about 15 years old. And it's not that. Huh. Now send me a couple pictures. I might be able to help you out. Okay. And, but apparently, and it was pretty easy to figure out. Yeah, I'm driving a 4-stroke. And, okay. But mine has a straight axle, chain drive, I think. And it's what it did was it stripped one of the hubs. They're apparently splined onto the end of the axle, and that joint is just take a look under the back while you try and go. And if the one tire is spinning, the other tire isn't spinning, but both axles are turning, you know what the problem is. It's the connection between the axle and the hub. So they're looking at getting a new one. Now, apparently, one of the cruder fixes to this is simply welded on. But they want to check and see whether the hub has cratered without the axle being too badly damaged. We'll see. Huh. You said the regular maintenance is super important. Well, that wouldn't surprise me, Jean-Francois. I presume it's also important to not overdrive it. In other words, take it bumps harder than you need, things like that, running at higher RPMs than necessary, things like that. And of course, maintenance is important too, but I suspect the driver is pretty important on those things too. Hard shifting and just what you might call routine abuse. Nothing really extraordinary, but some people can just run the machine a lot smoother than others. Good point, Chris. Yeah, the quads probably don't have oil filters. The side-by-sides probably do now. But those things are god-awful expensive. I mean, what are you looking, $15,000, $20,000 for a side-by-side? Rokon, huh? Okay. Hey, Shaggy. To make them ask, don't ride the clutch. Well, the one I'm riding has a centrifugal clutch, so I try and keep the engine revs up enough to make sure the clutch is fully engaged and try not to, basically lug it down. I want to keep it where it's not struggling and the engine is running at a decent RPM, but we're not going so fast that it's bouncing bad. One thing that I've noticed that I really don't like is the seat is like a banana seat. And if you were a single rider, not a problem. However, I have my beloved wife with me. So either I have to scoot forward to where my nether regions and my one remaining spherical organ is riding up against the front of the seat that's going up like this, while he was trying to keep from falling off the back, or else I got to scoot way up there to where my butt's, I'm like right here, and that saves my testicle and it gives Eva more room to sit where she's at. Why can't they just build a flat seat? Just a thought,
Probably has something to do with the location of engines and gas tanks and things.
Oh, I won't even mention that, John. I won't even say that out loud.
That bad, huh?
The
Y'all gotta behave with y'all bad
those
stuff.
bucket baskets that it has on it really work well too. I really like those because we can put knapsacks, little mini ice chests, buckets, all kinds of stuff in there. I can carry 6 buckets of ore back in one trip, which adds up pretty quick. Also, if you're going up a steep hill, you can put weight on the front bucket in the front basket only, and that'll keep it from getting front end light going up a steep hill. It's only 2-wheel drive. I have been told that 4-wheel drive quads are death machines because they can climb up a grade easily enough that it'll fall over on your back, just squish you. By the way, I was talking to a guy out there, a little one, when I was gone for a while.
Yeah.
I went to drop it off and came back. It was quite a while. And he was apparently had one of the cabins that we drive past on the way up there.
Yeah.
And he said that one of the locals had been killed a couple weeks ago on a quad, getting, it landed on top of him and killed him.
Oh my Lord.
Mm-hmm. My brother almost died that way.
Well, dude, you were trying to get me to wrestle with that thing, and I flat out was upset by the whole thing.
Well, that's because I was trying to counterweight on the uphill tire.
I know.
Not a
I
problem.
don't trust that.
Yeah, well, if I thought it was sketchy, I wouldn't have had you do it.
The goddess is not sanguine about these things at all.
UTV and ATVD. Okay. What are those acronyms? Utility transport vehicles? And all-terrain vehicles? Well, first of all, we got it. We're not really mining. We're getting bulk samples. Don't turn around on a slope. Sounds good to me. Yeah, I would agree with that. Of course, I learned that doing the sand dunes in a Jeep. Now, you can turn around on a slope in a Jeep on a steep slope. But what it is, you're going up at a pretty good rate of speed. You realize you're not going to make it to the top. So you crank the wheel hard while you still got that upward momentum, and you can make the curve and head back down.
Well, the other day you almost tipped that quad over on you getting out of the area I was in.
Yeah, but that's because it needed a little more weight on the front. All-terrain vehicle is a quad. An ATV is a quad. A UTV is a side-by-side. Let's see. Anyhow, we used to go run the sand dunes with a Jeep CJ5 with a 304 factory V8 in it, and Armstrong True Track tires. We just get out there, let them down to like 6 psi, and go. But we couldn't go everywhere. We had to be careful. And when you weren't going to make it up the hill, you had two choices. You could either bail early, where the momentum would keep you stuck while you made the U-turn, or they just, when you won't go straight up, come to a stop, and then back it down. A mud ox, huh? Okay, Brian, you have a question about ashing carbon. Go ahead and ask it.
Something I have not done before.
No, we haven't done that, but let's see what he says. I haven't heard of a mud ox either. How did you do it when you were using it? Well, we didn't ash our carbon. We stripped the carbon. That was when I was working at ChemGold. We were using cyanide, and we stripped the carbon using 195 degree, 2% cyanide, 2%, no, I think it was 1% cyanide, 2% sodium hydroxide solution. and then ran that through an electrolytic cell. Right now, we're stripping our resin rather than ashing. Presumably, we should be able to smelt our resin after stripping. We haven't been able to reactivate the resin effectively right now, so we're just saving it, and we'll see what happens. We've tried to do some regeneration, and so far nothing has really worked, but then we tried to do stripping for a while until we found something that worked. Is there an easy way to make your own activated carbon? Not really that I'm aware of. No, it's not electrolytically boosted cyanide stripping. It's just temperature. I mean, you just change the equilibrium and it comes back off the carbon. But then just ran through an electrolytic cell where it was using stainless steel cathodes. Not stainless steel cathodes. Steel wool cathodes. And we theoretically, when the carbon had been used a certain amount of times, it kind of loses its effectiveness, and then they just threw it in drums and let it sit there for a while. That's entirely possible, Jean-Francois. If, for example, we were using Eco Goldex to dissolve the gold out of the sluice concentrates, then we'd have such a high concentration in solution, and we could use such a strong solution grade, then we could probably directly electrowin it. The solution that we're using to dissolve out of the raw ore is so dilute that we don't get good electrical conductivity, good plating kinetics, or that sort of stuff. Can you buy carbon with carbon credits? I don't think so. Yes. Say if you're doing electronic scraps, sure, you should be able to have a solution strength that would make it very amenable to direct electrowinning.
That is something I want to try this winter.
He said, Tricky says, we dropped an Argo Cat 8x8 off a small mountain in Scotland. It rolled to the bottom. It was a mess, but we put the plastic panels back on, pumped up 2 tires, and went back up the hill. Nice equipment.
That sounds like nice equipment.
I heard of one where one guy I worked with said that he saw what was left of a dozer. He was in a little depression, so he didn't actually see the accident happen. But a guy was cutting a side hill on a steep mountainside, and it went over the edge, rolled to the bottom, and he said when he got to the main frame, the tracks were gone, the blade was gone, the cab was gone, but the engine was still running. He shut that off, and all the parts were laying up the hill, and the very top was the operator walking down because he had not been wearing his seatbelt. So when it went over the side, the first hit, he landed on the side window, broke it out, and the cat just lifted right off of him, leaving him there on the broken window. You know? Some models are chain driven, some others are hydraulic motor driven, some are both immediate. Now, why would you want to do both, I would wonder, Jean-Francois? I can see one or the other. I've never run hydrostatic transmissions at speed, where they were part of the steering, differential steering. if it was articulated or something like that, maybe use one hydraulic motor per side and then change to each wheel. Okay. Yeah. Um, so I don't know. But skid steering, I know the tanks use it, differential hydraulics. Tricky says for ash and carbon, 250C for 2 hours, then up to a maximum of 600C. Wait for the carbon to disappear and leave the metals behind. Don't go beyond 600C or you volatilize the precious metals. Okay, little one? Did you hear that?
250C
For 2 hours,
for 2 hours.
then 600C until the carbon's gone bye-bye.
Okay, write that down somewhere or ask Ricky to please email it to you.
I'll write it down. Ash, carbon, 250C, 2 hours, 600C till carbon gone, no higher than 600C. Okay, wrote it down.
Thank you. Thank you, Tricky. Kiss the babies.
Yeah, hydrostatics are fine at low speeds. I'd hate to drive one at 60 miles an hour. That's what I'm wondering about. Yeah, Jean-Francois, gold chloride is pretty volatile. Huh. Brand new Argo 8x8s go for about 15K. Same range as a side-by-side. Yeah, it's about the right range for a side-by-side. That sounds about right, honey bunny. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I don't know how good the steering is. I used to drive loaders underground that were hydrostatic drive. I mean, it was basically a hydrostatic transmission, then a standard mechanical drive, I believe. But the steering was articulation. It wasn't from the differential hydrostatic. That was my thought, honey bunny. That's why I was like, I don't know. So, yeah, that quad is cheap. It does the job. It has its limitations, but we just have to be careful not to take it past its limitations. Tricky says you're welcome. He's driving an Alice 85A up to 35 miles an hour in a salvage yard. Yeah, I'll say articulation. Yeah, you'd have to be careful at speed. I've driven articulated loader at probably about 25 miles an hour. You also got to worry about your tires starting to hop on you too. That can be a problem. And so that's something. A lot of these machines aren't designed to go very fast. Because what they do, you don't need to do very fast. But yeah, I don't know. Exactly. Toughness, traction power. You've been using Sherpas, huh? Okay, little one. Old Roman proverb, festina lente. What does that mean?
No idea.
Oh, Jean-Francois gave the translation later. Make haste slowly. So anyhow, so that was our big problem this week. But we got a lot of stuff to do testing the various money. This whole system has a lot of parameters that are completely undefined. Well, not undefined, but unmeasured at the current time that we'll have to measure. But I'm willing to bet that 14 mesh is not nearly fine enough. I can take the Stoughton Ross to 30 mesh by changing out the screen. Yep, right, Shaggy. And. So I say I can get it that far, but in general, I would want to do some screening tests to see what works well, and we'll figure it out. Not too complicated. Very basic stuff. I'll make a video so people can see it. We also got a sample from a guy that had a lot of copper in it. And we also got a specimen from someone with a lot of copper in it. How do you like that, Rock? I'd like to see a mountain of that. Yeah.
That is one heck of a specimen right there.
Yeah. This looks like pretty pure copper oxides and carbonates. That's fairly heavy. Jean-Francois says scrap copper is around $6 Canadian per pound. Hey, you know what? I was just thinking, Jean-Francois, we can have a race to see whose money depreciates faster. What's the current exchange rate, American to Canadian right now?
I think it's $1 Canadian is 75 cents US. We're pretty close to it.
He says Canadian is weaker than the US dollar. Okay.
Yeah, I think $1 Canadian is like 75 cents US.
Yeah, it looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Along those lines.
Rock. It's not mine. I'm not working that particular project. But yeah, that was some nice stuff.
And
Rock says it's 60 cents US per Canadian dollar.
Wow, it got worse.
Yeah. So you guys are racing us to the bottom, huh? Well, we'll see if we can beat you. How's that? We're working on it hard. Talk to the Biden administration.
Well,
yeah, you're not the only ones, Jean-Francois, in my opinion.
That piece of copper was given to me, you know.
Yeah.
Mine.
Ooh, it's hers.
Rock.
You can show them your crystals. He says, Rock says, currently it's $1.42 Canadian to the US dollar right now. A month ago, it was $1.30. Oh my goodness.
That's pretty sad.
Yeah, it is.
Well, let us know when it's $2 Canadian to $1 US, because then we can go over the border to go shopping.
Jean-Francois says, I should have bought gold. Talk to Eva. Silver. Buy silver.
Or gold. You should always be buying metals.
Yeah. Canadian was a greater value than the US dollars for many years. I remember when we were up in Washington State, they were pretty close, like $1.05 of one for $1 of the others.
Well, I'll tell you, I want older Canadian silver. Like
You
coins
take
with-
care, intern.
Like coins with George on them, and coins with Edward on them, and coins with the young Elizabeth on them. I
Yeah.
love old Canadian silver.
Yeah, well, Jean-Francois, I don't even know if it's legal to store in your bank box down here.
It isn't.
I know that when I had the kettle corn business, I found out it was illegal for me to put cash in my safety deposit box. Like, well, what the hell's a safety deposit box for then? If you
for
can't
your
put
birth-
valuables in it.
It's for your birth certificate
Yeah, well, I can do that with
and
a
family silver.
friggin' fireproof
not
safe.
You're allowed to put jewelry and flatware in it. You can't put coins in it. You can't put hats in it. You can't
Yeah.
put drugs in it, of course. Safety deposit boxes are a crock.
Yeah, they are now.
This is a known fact.
It even says in the United States you can't put coins in a safe deposit box. How about numismatics? Any idea?
I believe you can put numismatics and philatelics.
Philatelics?
Yeah, stamps.
Oh, stamps.
Stamp collections.
Okay. Well, those aren't currency, so yeah. But yeah. That's pretty much what I did, honey bunny. Yep.
Why would anybody trust a safety deposit box in a bank anymore anyway?
You know my ex-girlfriend? Okay. No, I didn't, Kodak. Let me see what this is. Pause. Transfer circular economy. Okay. I'll see if I can read that after the live stream, John. Oh, it's getting pretty weird out there where you can't put valuables in a safe deposit box.
Well, the real question you have to ask yourself is, why do things have them in the first place?
Well, it used to be to put valuables in. Quick Dick McDick. I think I've seen one or two of his comedy videos, Jean-Francois. Well, of course, Jean-Francois. I was listening to that guy. Who's running for president of Argentina, who's being interviewed by Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, he's practically a libertarian.
Pretty good. I mean, he's basically a libertarian economist. Oh. He says, what good can ever come of theft? You know, a little bit philosophical there, but yeah, when the government just steals, and when the poor steal from the rich, basically, with government assistance, how does that work out well in the long run? You know? Well, the whole world is made from force. But yeah. But we went in the United States toward the beginning to letting you keep the fruits of your labor, and it worked out pretty well. It usually does when you just get out of the way. I have no idea, Jean-Francois, about going John Galt. We're about as uncoupled as we can be while still remaining reasonably coupled. But yeah, it's an interesting situation we find ourselves in. We shall see how it all turns out. I have a feeling the next year is going to be extremely interesting. going to be quite different. So anyhow, I say on the mining front, probably got to focus a little more on the, what do you call it, testing and such right now, uh, and get that um, figured out and see how the various stages work. Basically, right now I have the micro sluice running into a bucket, which settles the coarse stuff out, which then goes into a big, it's a stock tub, not a giant one, but like 5 or 6 feet long and a couple of feet wide and a couple of feet deep, and let that settle out the intermediate size stuff, and then from there it just overflows onto the pad. What width of micro? So this one's only 3 inches. It was a free one. It's basically it's a test model. It's not big enough to do any production, but it's big enough to run. Well, like how long did it take us? About an hour and a half to run that 100-pound sample, little one.
Probably. And if we had a better, more efficient feeding method, we might not have that problem.
Yeah. I'm sure there is a general rule of thumb. Jim's not here that I see, but yes, it varies by your ore, of course, but they have general parameters that they operate in. I'm not exactly sure what they are. Earlier today, Chris was saying that to run my couple 100 pounds an hour, we'd probably need about an 8-inch wide sluice. On the other hand, when I was dredging, we had just a single sluice about, I don't know, I'm thinking about 18 inches wide. And we would run, I don't know, a ton an hour, something like that, of actual material through the sluice. We moved more than that, but any rocks, it was my job to throw them out of the way. Very good exercise. Plus, I didn't have to submerge myself in the water. Yeah, well, one of the big problems with the dredge, Jean-Francois, is that the bigger the rocks you suck up in the dredge, the fewer rocks you have to move by hand. And so the general tendency is to suck up anything you can suck up pretty easily. But that's where they have undercurrent dredges and stuff where they'll have an integral screen in it and a sluice underneath to try and do that. But it has a lot to do with the ratio of the biggest particles in the system to the size of the gold. And if you're running 2 or 3 inch rocks through your sluice, sucking them up and kicking them out, well, you're probably not going to be recovering a whole lot of really fine gold. And so it's highly variable. In our case, the material is precisely or relatively precisely fabricated, modified, whatever, where it is going to be 100% passing something, basically, or 95% passing some odd mesh. In my impact mill, the larger gold particles quite often just get caught in the mill behind the bottom 2 what do you call them? Stationary impactors, and it just, it's got a little vortex there, and they just get caught up there, and you can get quite a bit in there. So I would expect if I was going to one of my impact mills for this system that it would do pretty well in terms of that. It'll be capturing the coarser gold in there. But the stuff going into the sluice itself is going to be pretty fine, and therefore you can throttle back the fluid flow as long as you keep your fluid density good. You don't want to turn it into mud. Mud doesn't work. But say you'll have the ability to throttle it back a little bit if you want. Again, it all depends on what is the best action. Yeah, this stuff is really fractal, Chris. Really fractal looking. And so I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work. It's not going to be as bad as plain flakes, thin ones, but it's going to tend to wash more than BBs. That's for sure. This is really it's really pretty stuff. It really is. We'll have to see if we can get some photomicrographs to post. But yeah, it's some pretty stuff. And once we get this first 100-pound test checked out a little bit, then we'll go with the next one. I'm sure there's all kinds of details, Chris. And. I don't know, honey bunny. If you got something that'll actually suck it down to the bottom, fine. I just don't know. If I can do it all that I need without any mechanical anything, without any electric anything, I'm very happy. The simpler it can be and still do the job well, it's good. And let's say this looks to be pretty simple. And then just use solution to run it through, dump it on the tailings pad, and you should be able to get the other gold. That's my theory. We shall see what we shall see. I would think so, Chris. I believe diamagnetic refers to rock when a metal goes through a magnetic field, it induces eddy currents in it. That might work, John. Yeah, I say the repulsion of one magnetic field against another one. Okay. I know that, let's say, a conductor moving through a magnetic field it induces a magnetic field in the non-magnetic one because it creates little eddy currents that generate their own little magnetic fields. But how you would use that, I don't know. Okay? And it has to be moving with respect to each other. So you'd either have to have moving magnets under your sluice, or the gold will have to move through the sluice, which is not what you want it to do. Don't know. So if this works, it works. 0 moving parts is the number I like very, very much. And I say if it does what I need, that's fine. Wow, that would be undesirable, Jean-Francois. I wouldn't want that to happen. Of course, I'm not much into induction cooktop. I just prefer gas. You know.
Any normal person prefers a gas stove.
Could you take over for a little bit, little one? I need
Give me
to
a minute.
refill my water here and
Well, it's actually almost time for me, but I have absolutely nothing to say yet.
she has nothing to say yet.
I know, because I've been busy doing something else.
RP5 or RP4? I think it was RP4, Chris, but I'm not sure.
You had an RP4.
Yeah, I know. He said an RP5.
Yeah, you had an RP4.
Rock says, I for one do not believe that Eva has nothing to say yet. uh,
You don't even have your sign up, dude.
I know I don't.
Oh, they aren't even going to put my
It's
sign
using
up.
the whiteboard. I will put it up in just a
Hi,
minute.
everybody.
I have urgent things to urgently do.
He claims he has urgent things to urgently do. Oh, I have to go get something to show y'all. See if I can get a decent picture of that. I don't think I can. But when I was picking up samples, I found some very pretty crystals. These little guys are just a nice little cluster, and they're all really clear. There's little angels in a few of them.
Ask Rock about the clear versus milky.
And these ones are milky on the bottom, clear on the top. Some of them have angels in them. Yeah, I know the light is too bright. The light is always too bright. Well, anyway, they're very pretty crystals. Now, it is just the goddess's theory here, but the goddess is thinking, if I find enough quartz, because in the past, the ores that we have been dealing with, the quartz has not made pretty crystals. Bowl quartz, sugar quartz, milky quartz, it tended to be a solid body. There were not discrete terminal points and pretty clusters of crystals. It is the goddess's belief that if I find enough of the two different types, the clear versus the milky, I should separate them and test them separately, because I am wondering whether or not the ones that are the milky quartz tends to be more likely to be gold bearing than the clear quartz. No idea. But it's just, yeah, Rock, that's the thing. Um the stuff we had down
Montana B.
the stuff that we had down in Arizona was really, really bad quartz. And it had a lot of stuff in it. I mean, it was it had quite a few pyrites and things in it, but nothing really great. But it was a really they're really, really nice little crystals. I was quite happy to find these guys because I like crystals. You know, just one of those things. Hi, Rock. Hi, Jean Francois. Hi, Honey Bunny. Hi, Shaggy. But yeah, they are just, it's a very nice little crystal cluster, and I was very happy to find it because, you know, finding pretty crystals, I also found some really tiny, clear terminal points. Very, very clear. I was happy about those. Single terminal. Finding crystals like that in the wild, not at a place like Crystal Park, is really cool. Just saying, you know, it's cool. The goddess is a fan of crystals. IRA, ETG, and now the EU move on China electric vehicles. Governments are showering mining with money. Really now? The European Union will launch an anti-subsidy investigation into Chinese electric vehicles. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen told the bloc's lawmakers in an annual address on Wednesday. Global markets are now flooded with cheaper Chinese electric cars, and that price is kept artificially low by huge state subsidies. This is distorting our markets. Von der Leyen told the European Parliament in Strasbourg. And just to make sure the scale of the problem is not lost on anyone, she added, European car makers are often undercut by competitors benefiting from huge subsidies. It's huge. Really now. Considering the high stakes and troubling outlook that particularly the German mass market automakers like Volkswagen are facing, the eventual imposition of tariffs or other measures to limit Chinese car makers' access to Europe has an air of inevitability to it. The goddess wonders if any of these people are rethinking that whole business some years back about letting China participate in the World Trade Organization. Just, wondering. European car makers already have a number of successful joint ventures inside China. And at the beginning of last year, Beijing scrapped ownership restrictions for foreign car makers entirely. So how the country could further open up its market to the EU is unclear. I'm sure the EU will think of something. Chinese EVs are scarcer than Chinese-made electric golf carts in the U.S., and the incentives under the $430 billion plus Inflation Reduction Act are designed to keep it that way. Well, no shit, Sherlock. The Biden administration's grants, subsidies, incentives, and loans to build the EV supply chain under the IRA led to consternation in Brussels over how to respond. The European Green Deal is just to reiterate, it's huge. At least 600 billion euros from the continent's COVID recovery plan is being funneled into the program. For the EU, bolstering the eastern flank to defend the car industry is a logical next move. The Middle Kingdom's vehicle exports surpassed South Korea in 2021, then overtook Germany in 2022, and this year will take the top spot from Japan. Trade data indicates a total of 2.8 million vehicles were exported from China during the first 7 months of 2023, including 1.8 million internal combustion engine powered vehicles, a 74% jump compared to last year. At the recent Munich Auto Expo, 50 Chinese companies, that's 50, displayed their wares, and even the most ardent Euroland car lovers agreed they stole the show. There may be a case to make that China's growing success on European car markets is the result of predatory practices and Beijing pouring money into the industrial champions. But if the IRA and the EGP is not a dollar short, it's more than a day late. The rapid success of Chinese automakers in dominating all aspects of the global mine to megawatt supply chain, the key to EV affordability, over a little more than a decade is short of astonishing. Actually, it's not. How Chinese electric cars, which are shot through with high-tech features not found in U.S. and European-made vehicles, were able to leapfrog to the West is not. Europe has reason to worry. From a standing start, China has now cornered a full fifth of Europe's EV market. just want to interject here with just a little bit of logic. Now, the goddess will preface by saying, I am in no way defending, endorsing, or otherwise liking Pandaland on this one, okay? Everyone should know by now how the goddess feels about Pandaland monopolizing all the resources. As in, I really, really don't like it. However, let's look at this logically. Let's see. Pandaland controls about 90% of the metals and materials and rare earths needed to make EV batteries. Pandaland controls about 80% of mining worldwide in all kinds of disadvantaged places for these materials. Pandaland controls a huge market share of the refinery capabilities. Those refineries that the American environmentalists nimbied away into the ether. You know, the lead smelters and the rare earths refineries and the rare earth mining and all that happy stuff that we nimbied away to other places, to put it diplomatically, so that we would not have to look at big old nasty, dirty, smelly mines or big old nasty, dirty, smelly refineries. Well, guess who built a lot of the shit to replace it? China. Oh yeah. You want arsenopyrite refined these days? One of the few places you can get it done. You know? And Mexico, I mean, Mexico does a lot of the things we used to do, but we can no longer do because it was planet killing. Funny how all the planet killing shit that we made go away, even though we have the technology and the regulatory environment to do it safely, is now being done in other random places by highly exploited workforces with zero environmental concerns and controls, almost zero worker safety concerns and controls for pennies on the fucking dollar. So, yes, EU people, while I am sure that Pandaland is definitely subsidizing their little EVs, which are probably going to start spontaneously combusting on every street corner in Europe anyway, while Pandaland is probably subsidizing them, their costs are a lot lower because they own the fucking supply chain. When you own everything from mineral in the ground through exploited underpaid miners that get mineral out of the ground in unsafe conditions, through cut dollar rate refineries with unsafe working conditions and exploited workers to the end product, then yeah, you can make a stellar, amazing, ridiculous profit margin while still heavily undercutting your competition. NIMBY is gonna come home to roost, and it's really gonna hurt. NIMBY is gonna hurt like hell in Europe, and NIMBY is gonna hurt like hell right here in the US. And yeah, I still don't like Pandaland, okay? Let's face it here. Atomos Intelligence tracks electric passenger car registrations and the metals contained in their batteries in over 100 countries. The Toronto headquartered research consultant's EV battery capacity and battery metals tracker shows that in the first half of 2023, 19% of all gigawatt hours delivered to EV and hybrid buyers in Europe, including Britain and non-EU states, were contained in China-made EVs and packs. That's 19% that they directly are responsible for. And I bet if you follow the money, it's a whole lot more. Just saying. In absolute terms, the battery power exported to Europe from China has grown more than 51% year to date, a total of 14.14 gigawatt hours. And China is stepping on the accelerator. The month of June saw 71% more made in China gigawatt hours end up in Europe compared to June 2022, cornering a full fifth of the market. A fifth. Well, unless the Common Core math has changed this one too, that would be 20%. Ooh, that's going to hurt. European car buyers probably won't be pleased if the European Commission's response leads to higher EV prices and less variety, as it likely will. Atmos data shows the best-selling electrified car in China in 2023 is the BYD Song Plus DMI plug-in hybrid with a range of 1,000 kilometers, including 150 kilometers in fully electric mode. 150 kilometers in fully electric mode.
Halfway to Missoula.
Yeah. I know. It goes for a song in its home country. Just $27,000. Given the cutthroat competition there, it can probably be had for even less. For European car buyers struggling to cope with rolling energy crises, the ability to drive from Berlin to Paris in a sleek, compact SUV on a single charge will not go unnoticed. Neither would the rotating 13-inch TikTok-ready touchscreen. Really now. The song is not available in the US or Europe, although Brazil has taken more than 1,000 deliveries in 2023. In China, BYD has sold songs to the tune of 229,000 units in the first half of this year. Chinese car shoppers enjoy an embarrassment of riches with 110 different brands and more than 300 different electrified models to choose from. The Commission may be pleased to hear the majority of Chinese EV exports to Europe this year were non-Chinese brands, including cars made by BMW and Dacia in China. The fact that the best of these shipments were Teslas only complicates matters. Oh dear. Possibly slapping tariffs on the U.S. electric car pioneer because it assembles EVs and uses batteries made in Shanghai won't please Washington, but it makes it clear any legislation that comes out of the investigation won't be easy to navigate. For miners supplying the battery metals, the EU-China EV spat is simply more fuel on the fire started by the Inflation Reduction Act and continued by the EGP. Made in China EVs have hauled 30,000 tons of battery metals onto European roads so far this year. Atmos data shows the batteries made in China EVs exported to Europe over the first 6 months of 2023 contained over 8,000 tons of lithium carbonate equivalent, representing 18% of Europe's total consumption over the period, an increase of 67% year on year. No doubt when sodium-ion batteries, already garnering market share in China, fully take off, Europe should expect even more salted roadways. Similarly, 20% of graphite deployed onto Europe's highways and byways through the first half of 2023 hit the road in China-made EVs and packs, totaling almost 13,000 tons year to date, up 68% year over year. In the same period, nearly 6,000 tons of nickel made its way to Europe from China in EVs with NCM lithium-ion batteries, representing 14% of all battery nickel deployed in the region and a 46% increase in imports year over year. And it gets even worse. End result here. NIMBY is coming home to roost. This is the goddess playing the smallest violin in the world in a song of sympathy for Ursula von der Leyen and her European friends, and Lord Malarkey and the other orcs in Mordor on the Potomac. This is what happens when you make it difficult to innovate. This is what happens when you NIMBY away all of your own freaking infrastructure to people who A, are really, really good at long-range planning, B, have a far higher population than you, willing to work for a whole hell of a lot less because they don't have much choice, and C, really don't like you very much. Just saying. The goddess is looking forward to seeing how many of these vehicles have the habit of spontaneously combusting. The goddess is pretty sure it's going to be quite a few. Just saying. The goddess sincerely hopes that not too many people get hurt in the process. But you never know these days. Okay? I mean, that's just the way it is. This is only going to get worse. If we do nothing else to help our industry, large and small, in our various countries, we must get behind people, non government organizations, lobbying groups, whoever, who are working on land law matters and land use matters and working desperately hard to bring back our infrastructure in any way, shape, or form. Because when the poo poo hits the oscillating device, as is coming very soon, when the poo poo hits the oscillating device, it will behoove us to have our shit here, not out there. Just saying. Indian and Canadian officials discuss critical mineral mining cooperation. The goddess has no idea what the actual slant on this article is going to be because the goddess is not Canadian. So if any of our Canadians want to weigh in on this one after we're done here, feel free. A top Indian minister held talks on boosting critical mineral mining cooperation with Canadian officials on Monday, the Indian government said, amid tense diplomatic relations between the two countries. And there is a picture of socks and Narendra Modi in 2018. India's coal and mines minister, Pradhat Joshi, resolved to strengthen the supply chain of critical minerals in talks with Ranj Pillai, the premier of Canada's Yukon Territory, the government said in a statement. The statement did not specify the critical minerals under discussion, but mentioned the Yukon's leading mineral resources include lead, zinc, silver, gold, asbestos, iron, and copper. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi raised strong concerns about Sikh protests in Canada, with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on the sidelines of a G20 summit in New Delhi earlier this month. I wonder what kind of socks he was wearing. Come to think of it, I didn't see pictures of his socks from this G20. I'm disappointed. For its part, Canada paused talks on a proposed trade treaty with India. Canadian Trade Minister Mary Ng is also postponing a planned trade mission to India. Oh, lovely. One wonders what Socks is up to up there. Hi, blind dude. Jean-Francois, I hope we get more nuclear. Yeah. I'll tell you that. B2 Gold grabs Anglo Gold stake in Colombian project. Well, let's see what's going on here. Canada's B2 Gold will become the sole owner of the Gramalote Gold project in Colombia after acquiring the 50% stake held by South Africa's Anglo Gold Ashanti, its partner in the venture, for $60 million with an M bucks. The gold project, located 124 kilometers northeast of Medellin, was put on hold in August last year as preliminary results from an optimized feasibility study suggested the Gramalote did not meet the JV's investment threshold for mine development. A few months later, partners decided selling Gramalote was the best option for both companies, but failed to find a third party to take over the project. B2 Gold said the consolidation of Gramalote under one owner would make it possible to analyze lower capital intensity, higher return development opportunities for the project. It noted that so far, Gramalote was looked at as a larger scale project to provide meaningful production growth to both companies. The Vancouver-based gold producer will now examine various smaller scale development options to identify cost savings. It will also start a new study in the fourth quarter of this year with the goal of completing an initial assessment by the end of second quarter 2024. The acquisition of Gramalote will add 2.11 million gold ounces of indicated mineral reserves and 0.74 million gold ounces of inferred mineral resources to B2 Gold's resource base. For Anglo Gold, the sale will help increase its focus on operating assets and projects it intends to develop, the company said in a separate statement. Anglo Gold Ashanti remains a committed long-term investor in Colombia with our exciting Quebradona copper and gold project, and we look forward to playing a key role in developing of a modern, responsible mining sector in the country. Mm-hmm. Anglo Gold will receive $60 million from B2 Gold in stages, $20 million due on closing of the transaction, and the remainder in tranches, depending on the achievement of certain milestones. If commercial production does not begin within 5 years of the transaction closing date, no payment will be made. Gramalote was B2 Gold's first project when it was an exploration company. In 2015, it received its first environmental license awarded in Colombia in 35 years. The permit gave it 3 years to work through social aspects related to the open pit project, including relocating artisanal miners and some nearby residents. During that time, Gramalote became the center of a mining rights dispute with Canada's Zonte Metals, which remains active. We shall see what we shall see when it comes to that regard. Let's see what else we have going on in the news. Speaking of news, there has been almost no news this week. Well, except if you happen to live around North Carolina somewhere and you happen to see an F-35 just kind of around, there's a phone number you can call on Facebook and on Twitter, since they kind of lost one. But, it's okay. We lose planes all the time. It's nothing major. Just saying.
Pilot forgot to set the parking brake.
It just kind of is somewhere, wherever it is. And in other news, if you happen to be lucky enough to be able to do international arbitrage, gold and silver prices are really going through the freaking roof in the Shanghai market. Just saying. But that's an entirely other situation. New admission from the BIS that central banks play in the gold market. No. The goddess is shocked. Shocked, I tell you. While central bank trading is a primary determinant of the price of gold and other currencies, gold market analysis seldom makes any reference to the broker that provides much camouflage for central bank gold trading, the Bank of International Settlements. Really now? Of course, over many years, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, GATA, has amassed much documentation of BIS intervention in the gold market. Among our favorites are a BIS PowerPoint presentation made at a BIS conference for prospective BIS members, actually advertising that the bank's services to members include gold market interventions. Well, now, I think we've already decided that J.P. Morgan's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in fines and several convictions for manipulating the precious metals market are a vast conspiracy theory.
Lars, check your inbox.
And Bank of America's conditions for the same are also a vast conspiracy theory. And Wells Fargo's little playing around here and there, they got them fines and convictions, was also a vast conspiracy theory. So I am 100% sure that the BIS putting out a PowerPoint advertising as a service to customers that they will manipulate the precious metals market is obviously a vast conspiracy theory. Way out there in tinfoil hat land. Oh, no. Couldn't possibly be happening. And a speech by a leading BIS official declaring that to influence the price of certain assets, especially gold and foreign exchange, is a big objective of central bank cooperations through the BIS. Robert Lamborn, who apparently among financial alone among financial analysts outside central banking, calculates and reports the monthly changes in the bank's gold swap positions, called attention to another confirmation of the bank's major, but largely surreptitious, role in rigging the gold and currency markets. It is a pamphlet in which the bank profiles itself. The pamphlet is posted at the BIS's internet site. On page 3, under the heading of Banking Services, we offer financial services exclusively to central banks, monetary authorities, and international organizations, mainly to assist them in the management of their foreign exchange assets. As an institution owned and governed by central banks, we are well placed to understand the needs of reserve managers, their primary focus on safety and liquidity, as well as the evolving need to diversify their exposures and obtain a competitive return. To meet those needs, we provide credit, gold, and foreign exchange intermediation and asset management services while administering our own capital. An integrated risk management function ensures financial and operational risks are properly measured and controlled. Hmm. You know, the goddess may need a refresher course on bankerese or bankerlish or whatever they call their language. Bankish, that's what it is, bankish. The goddess isn't quite fluent in bankish, but that sounded an awful lot like he was saying that they manipulate markets as a service or a fee. Oh, the goddess must be wrong. Just, oh no. But this measuring and controlling is done in secret, the better to deceive and cheat the markets that are being measured and controlled. This measuring and controlling, the BIS suggests, are actually for the benefit of those who are deceived and cheated. I believe the word for this is gaslight. Particularly those using gold to try to protect themselves against rampant inflation, which has become the main product of modern central banking. Think about that for a minute because it's true. The biggest export the United States has is our inflation. How good central banks are determining the value of all capital, labor, goods, and services in the world, so that mere free markets needn't bother. Gold market analysis that doesn't incorporate the work of the BIS is largely a waste of time. So, nearly all gold market analysis is largely a waste of time. Of course, the goddess will once again point out that physical metal, silver and gold, and platinum and palladium and rhodium, and if you want to get really weird about it, osmium might be on your list too. Don't play with the osmium, it's toxic. Okay. Um, the physical metal, the paper price matters exactly twice in the life of your physical metal. Once when you buy it, and once when you spend it. Or for those people who don't understand the concept of actually spending money, sell it. Okay? So, other than that, will your gold and silver transactions be reported to the government? Well, Liberty Safe, we've all heard about them. The nation's largest manufacturer of gun safes recently fell into hot water. The company provided the access code for a customer safe to FBI agents who were executing a search warrant. Nathan Hughes, the safe's owner, is under investigation for crimes related to the events of January 6, 2020, a day that will live in infamy according to the Democrats, in Washington, D.C. Some were not happy to hear the company cooperated with the FBI's request, particularly given that many people perceived the crackdown on January 6 protesters as politically driven and illegitimate. Well, no shit, Sherlock. The backlash at Liberty Safe raises questions about how companies should act in defense of their clients' privacy. So let's break down what happened there real quick. Just a refresher. Out the door, dead people from three-letter agencies of various varieties shows up at this dude's house. They're like, here's a warrant. We get to search everything. GTFO out of our way, or we might ventilate you since we're in the habit of ventilating people lately, you know. I doubt they put it that way, but these people are getting a little bit weird, so you never know. So they go into this dude's house and they're looking around and they're going around everywhere and they come across this Liberty Safe. So, being good little three-letter agency people, they called Liberty Safe Company and they said, oh, by the way, we know you keep access codes, so we want the access code because we done served warrant. And Liberty Safe says, well, we need to see the warrant before we give you the access code. And so they sent Liberty a copy of the warrant, and then Liberty gave them the access code. They got into the safe, and everything went from there. So then Liberty made two cardinal mistakes here when the news got out. They put a nice obfuscating statement out on social media that said they're proud defenders of liberty, proud defenders of 2A, proud defenders of privacy. And of course, if a federal agent shows us that they have a warrant for your property, we're going to comply, even though it's for your property, which isn't our property anymore. And then when people roundly condemned them for this point, they shut off their social media comments. You would think by now these companies would learn that it's really, really a bad idea. Another company recently was shut off their social media comments. That would be a company called Dove. You may or may not have heard of them. Not the ones that make chocolate bars, though their new spokesman probably eats a hell of a lot of Dove chocolate bars. The one that makes soap. Yeah, that's a whole other story. We're not going to talk about fat positivity here. The goddess is not fat positive. Okay. The biggest takeaway from this incident with Liberty is quite simple. The goddess, first of all, was shocked to find out that any safe company was still keeping a copy of your combination. It literally had not dawned on me. I assumed that if you bought a safe for privacy, any information they had on your combination went bye-bye, and if you locked yourself out, then you were a fucking idiot and it's entirely your fault. It turns out that's not the case. The biggest problem here is quite simple. And it's a problem that Liberty claimed several days later, when the stink wouldn't go away, that they were going to handle differently the next time. They sold this man a product. That product was no longer their property. That product was this dude's property. The only thing they still had was a little file that gave the original combination on this safe, which is their property, not dude's property. Well, the warrant that they got a copy of was not a warrant that says Liberty Safe. Here is a warrant made out to you from a judge that says you have to hand over your property, the file with that damn combo in it. Oh, no, that's not what happened. If that had been what happened in the first place, the goddess would absolutely support that. Okay? Because the warrant was made out to them and was addressing their property that they had in their possession. No. What happened here is they were given a copy of a warrant to an item that was not their property any longer. That was not in any way, shape, or form in their possession. And they decided to cooperate with some yo-yos and try to hide behind the legality of saying, well, it was a warrant. It wasn't a warrant made out to them. It wasn't a warrant that had anything to do with them. It was a warrant that had to do with this dude. No. That is acceptable. If a 3-letter agency contacts your company and says, okay, you sold this dude this thing, so we want you to give us all your information on this thing that is no longer your property. Oh, hell no. The goddess is saying no. The goddess is saying you can go to a nice judge and you can get a warrant from a judge for my property. I ain't going to aid and abet you getting a hold of somebody else's property. Really now? That's rude. Well, that was the position that Liberty Safe apparently came around to about 3 days later. But once again, the Liberty Safe thing with the turning off comments on social media really illustrates just how much these companies are losing touch with reality. Because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if a company stuck their foot in it and did something, and the general public started sending them a gajillion letters, and the general public started picketing outside their offices, they weren't closing down communication. They weren't shutting off their emails. They weren't shutting off their customer service lines. They were doing exactly the opposite, so that their customers would have a chance to vent, have a chance to scream at them, have a chance to calm down, and so that they could discuss what was going on in a reasonable way. These companies aren't doing that anymore. Dove is another great example of the whole thing, but that is not Liberty. The backlash at Liberty Safe raises questions about how companies should act in the defense of their clients' privacy. Well, the dude wasn't their client anymore. He wasn't asking them to keep a copy of his backup. They now have made it a policy that you can ask them to expunge their copy of your combination lock, by the way.
If you believe it.
If you believe that. The thing is, that should be the default. You should have to opt in to them keeping it and have all the ramifications laid out for you. This should not be the default that they keep it and you have to opt out. Oh no. The default should be you have to opt in for them to keep a copy. Our clientele at Money Metals, this is Money Metals writing this, ask questions about what Money Metals will and will not report because, of course, it's a metals company. And this is a question that a lot of people are asking when you buy bullion online, or in some states when you buy and sell bullion in a store and they want copies of your ID for some bizarre reason. Money Metals does occasionally receive a subpoena from attorneys and law enforcement. These pertain to matters ranging from criminal investigations to divorce. They do not, by default, respond to unofficial requests coming from investigators or other third parties. On rare occasions, they receive a subpoena that is both served properly, often they're not, and well drafted, which is to say specific and narrowly tailored. In such cases, it may be the legal obligation to comply. Okay? They make it a practice to notify their customers of the existence of a subpoena so their customers can object. But this is the thing. That is another thing we all need to fight for. None of these companies should be putting privacy violation things as the default that you have to opt out of. The first and primary consideration for any financial institution, any safe company, anybody who claims to be protecting your freaking rights should be, you're automatically out of all that shit unless you volunteer for it. And Liberty is probably not going to come back from this one very easily. They're still trying to figure out why people are having a little trouble trusting them right now. But yeah, I'm not the only person who was absolutely shocked to find that the safe company that they had bought their safe from probably still had a copy of their combo. Quite fascinating that was. And in other random news, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, Dove soap has done put their foot in it this time. You may remember several months ago, or several years ago. Well, anyway, it was sometime in the recent winters. There was a chick who was going to college on the other side of the country. And there was a Black Lives Matter protest going on there. And some city workers of some kind were trying to direct traffic so that people could get around the protesters that were obstructing traffic and causing other forms of mayhem. And this woman was in the process of thanking said workers for protecting these idiotic protesters from, as she put it, quote unquote, becoming speed bumps. In other words, thank you for protecting the nice BLM protesters so that they don't become speed bumps. A morbidly obese, very melanin enhanced person took to social media, accused this college student of being a raving racist and saying that the college student had said that the BLM protesters had to get out of the way before she made them effing speed bumps, which, by the way, she didn't. Proceeded to stalk her all over social media, reported her to her college, got her expelled, got her scholarships yanked, lost her job, completely trashed her reputation, and after several months of concerted harassment that completely wrecked this girl's life, she publicly admitted that no, she probably had misheard and, she wasn't sure. But we all know that these people are racist anyway. Quite interesting. In the aftermath of this event, the young lady who was the victim of this targeting has been unable to get her life back together. She now has a black mark on her educational record that is keeping her from getting into any of these woke indoctrination facilities, which is probably a good thing, but she doesn't see it that way right now. Her life has been pretty much a hell because people who keep running into the story when it keeps getting revived by her harasser on social media are tracking her down and adding to the harassment. Her life has been pretty much hell on wheels for quite a while now. Meanwhile, her harasser has gotten multiple sponsorships from multiple multi-million-dollar companies and just got accepted into a highly sought-after PhD program and is internationally famous, and her GoFundMe got like gazillions of dollars, and her social media accounts took off. And she just celebrated getting a brand new sponsorship from none other than Dove Soap. Now, one would think that a soap model, if you will, would have good skin. Just saying. I mean, the goddess could never be a hand model because the goddess has too many wrinkles. The goddess has too many scars. The goddess has very, very short nails. So no, nobody is going to hire the goddess to do the Palmolive commercial or to sell nail polish or to advertise skin cream. The goddess could not be a soap model. Probably because the goddess is not a morbidly obese person who is very much a race baiter and very much an instigator and an all-around asshat. But the thing is, if you're going to hire a soap model, if you're going to hire a spokesman for a soap company, you should at least try to choose someone who has really nice looking skin. Kind of like if you're going to hire a spokesperson for tampons or feminine hygiene products of any kind, you might want to choose a chick instead of a dude in a dress. But I guess, what they're selling might be something other than soap. That's about all the goddess can figure on the issue. Just saying. Very, very bizarre. But that's usually the way it is. And that's where we are in the social world these days. Gold closed at $1,922.70 and silver at $23.10. So, yeah. I mean, platinum is hanging in there at $898, palladium's $1192, and rhodium's at $34.50. Not much going on. But we have an interesting report here. The newest hype. Gold to hit $5,000 in 3 years. Watch the default wave kick off a U.S. recession in Q4 by Michael Lee. If anybody wants to read this article, even though the gold market lacks direction ahead of the Federal Reserve September monetary policy meeting, prices will make a move and hit $5,000 an ounce within 3 years, according to Michael Lee, founder of Michael Lee Strategy. The stagnation in the price action is partly because of the strength of the U.S. dollar and the market's interest rate expectations. But the macro data the market is basing its estimates on looks manipulated or flawed by design, according to Lee. Well, yeah, always has been. For a lot of the United States, they're already in recession, he told Michelle McCory, lead anchor and editor-in-chief at Kitco News. You've already seen some massive deterioration in the labor market, though it's certainly not being reported that way. Lee broke down the U.S. jobs data releases from this year, pointing to a 12 standard deviation event, which is known as an extreme statistical outlier. Really? Every single time a report came out this year, it was later revised lower. This has happened every month this year. This is a 12 sigma deviation event, meaning you're more likely to get struck by lightning 5 times on the way to work than this happening. No. The goddess thought the odds were even higher than that. Really? You have to ask yourself, is this government bureaucracy? Is this a flawed model? Or is the Bureau of Labor Statistics cooking the books in favor of the Biden administration? Option 4, all of the above. Lee also did not rule out a late-year inflation spike due to higher oil prices, which could force the Fed to introduce another hike. I think that would be a mistake, he noted. To find out why better-than-expected U.S. employment prints help the Fed's tightening cause and who the data benefits, there's a video you can go watch. A U.S. recession is unavoidable, and the first thing to hit the economy will be a wave of defaults. Absolutely. This default wave will lead us to the next recession. I see lending getting tighter and capital getting restricted in the economy, so the default wave begins. You typically need about 18 months into the yield curve inversion before the wheels start to come off employment, which puts us toward the end of this year. We've never had an inversion like this without some sort of recession. The economic fallout will look more like the 2001 recession than what was seen in 2008. To get Lee's forecast and what to expect from a 2001-like recession, watch the video. The Fed plays a crucial role in any recession cycle, according to Lee, who criticized the U.S. bank's central willingness to bail out troubled banks. Yeah. As the labor market starts to deteriorate, spending declines and it causes more defaults until the Fed finally cuts, and then we start all over again. And you need those default cycles to clean out bad companies, so you don't end up with a bunch of zombie companies, he said. Well, we already have a zombie currency, so, there is that. The Fed is making a mistake with their bank liquidity programs because the whole point of a rate hiking cycle is to flush out the excess. Lee questioned why the gold price is still below the key psychological level of 2,000 an ounce, drawing parallels to reports of price suppression in the silver market. Well, no shit, Sherlock. One has to wonder how gold is not broken out materially above 2,000, given the amount of buying these BRICS nations are doing at the moment. With silver, you're finally seeing some JP Morgan traders go to jail for what they did 15 years ago in containing the price of silver. They're still doing it. Is there something like that going on in the gold market to artificially deflate the price? Well, no shit, Sherlock. When all these stars line up and the price of something should be much higher, your mind just goes to these conspiracy theories. Because so many have become true over the last few years. Lee added gold is bound to break out materially higher given the recession, pointing to China and Europe as the first two triggers for the rally. At some point, there will be a flight to safety. If we have another breaking event like a Silicon Valley bank, then all of a sudden you get above 2000 and you really start moving. Lee identified the key mover for gold in the next couple of years. It's in the video, okay? But yeah, so one pundit who apparently has missed the entire fact that
With you in a minute, Jimmy.
metals suppression has been and is still going on in both gold and silver, is predicting 5,000 an ounce. Meanwhile, silver and gold are still on sale. So back up the truck at your local coin shop, because if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Bye-bye.
Ugh. Hey, Rock, are you still here? Do you see Jimmy Robinson's question down there? I'm thinking barite, maybe. Yeah, it can be brown, yellow, tan. It can look kind of like quartz. Try looking up barite, B-A-R-I-T-E, Jimmy. Barite is pretty dense mineral. Not sure what kind of minerals of tungsten there are. There's scheelite. That could also look kind of like quartz. It'd be pretty heavy.
But it fluoresces.
Do you have an ultraviolet light, Jimmy? If you do, try using a black light. See if it fluoresces. If it does, it might be scheelite, which is a tungsten mineral. It's also quite dense. And it can also be colored like that. Scheelite. Yeah, we need to look at one for ourselves too. But I say a black light can be handy for a number of things. We're working on getting one also. But yeah, scheelite, tungsten, that's going to be pretty. Tungsten itself is as heavy as gold, as the metal. It's as dense as gold, which is unusual. There's very few things that are as dense as gold. Even lead doesn't come close. "365 nanometer, that's pretty short wave, isn't it, Jean-Francois? What are you usually looking for with that?" Seems to me about, yeah, typically violet light, I think, is about 600 nanometers, if I'm not mistaken. But I think somewhere on my list is black light. We got the Geiger counters. They'll be here shortly. And it's on my list there, mineral light. Have to look up that. 600 nanometer is closer to red. Okay, let's see. Violet, 380 to 450. Green. Yeah, you're right. That would be, I guess, more in the yellow range. 3 more rows. Let's see. Wow. It would be in the orange. 600 nanometers would be orange. Okay. So you need what? 365? Yeah, you said 365 up earlier there, Jean-Francois. Used to find organic materials showed infection, uranium glass, various plastics. We're looking for like a 3-band, near, mid, and far. We also got a radiation meter on the way. Oh, so many things. Antiques, huh? What was that? Was that a yellow glass? Mysterious material minus 100 stays with it. Okay. So this mysterious mineral is kind of a tannish color and high density, huh? Looks like Rock Butcher has left the building. I haven't seen Chris jump in here. Rock would be the guy that really would have a much better idea. That's his bailiwick, exploration geologist and geochemist. But yeah, try black light with it. I'm not sure. Okay. You shared a possible mineral for this. What is it, Honey Bunny? It doesn't show anything. Let's see. Could you give us a name, Honey Bunny? It's not in the email. If you tried sharing it on the chat, it doesn't show anything. Okay, Lars. Let's forward that back to Chris. Okay. Looks like pure quartz, huh? Chris says uraninite? I don't know. What color is uraninite, Chris? Isn't it a bright yellow? Or let's see, pitch blende maybe? That would be black, wouldn't it? Let's try uraninite. That's pretty dark in color. Yeah. Does this look like it? Go ahead and click on that from Honey Bunny, Jimmy. See what you think on that. Side to right, it's a bit tan. It goes tetrahedron crystals too. Specific gravity 3 point. That's not real heavy. Honey Bunny says it's very dense. It's riding with the gold in the pan. So that it had to be quite dense. Let me see how much scheelite is. Scheelite density is see unit cell color, Mohs streak, specific gravity 6. Let's try barite. Barite is only 5. So scheelite is the winner so far. Thorium dioxide. When you're panning using certain techniques, you can really separate it pretty well according to density.
Yeah, watch his most recent video for that.
Thorium dioxide is all fancy stuff. So density 10. Okay. Yeah, that would be pretty. That would ride pretty high in the pan.
Yeah, but it wouldn't ride as high as gold.
Yeah, Jean-Francois. Right now, I'm not sure what I want to. I'm pretty comfortable here in Montana. I don't know where I'd want to try going to besides here, because I'm pretty
Nowhere.
comfortable here.
Nowhere, especially not Arizona. Arizona sucks rocks. It's a public service announcement.
Do you get a sensation that somebody has a feeling about something?
We're staying in Montana. Don't even think about it.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, Jean-Francois. By necessity, I'm kind of going to be forced a little bit here to do some gravity concentration work. So we'll see if I can come up with the best solution I can find for that part of your operation. Now, I noticed the way you spell Cameroon is different from what I'm used to. Are there different spellings depending upon where you're from?
Used to be a French place.
Camer. Cameroon. That's the way I'm used to seeing it spelled.
You probably spelled it the way the French did when they were colonizing.
Yeah, that's the French spelling.
Yeah.
The English spelling apparently has 2 O's.
Yeah, when the French colonized the place, they spelled things Frenchy.
He says Cameroon has both French and English as official languages. Well, is that English or American English or Australian English? Oh my goodness. I would presume that there's the same nuance differences in French and stuff like that too. Huh. Minus 30 gold just sticks right with it, huh? Interesting. Well, you've got some possibilities. You look that up on Wikipedia and see if there's some tests you can do with it. It'll tell you. But I mean, at a specific gravity of 10, it's going to ride actually a little higher than steel. Steel's only about a specific gravity of 8.5, I think. I'm sure he could, but Jimmy's not, a chemist with access to a lot of stuff. Well, yeah, getting a whole bunch of it would be fine. Of course, if you could isolate a whole bunch of it, you could then just send it to a lab too. Yeah, let's say if you can get enough to analyze, that would be a good way to go about it. Monzonite. I'm sure that's you're talking monzonite. You've got monazite spelled there. Chris, MON. Oh, come on. There's also a monazite. So there's a monazite.
There's moissanite, but that's a crystal.
Huh. How weird.
There's moissanite, but that's a crystal.
I've heard of monzonite, intrusive rock. That's what I was looking for. Alkali metal oxides, plagioclase, and alkali feldspar shouldn't be that dense if it's a feldspar, I wouldn't think. Wow, that's a really, really useless Wikipedia entry. Well, I saw one somewhere where they took iron and hooked it to, what was it? Lignin molecules. And so, as long as whatever it was you were trying to find out about was not magnetic, you could use a magnetic field to make the lignin as dense as you wanted it. Yeah, as a feldspar would not be that dense. That would be pretty similar to silica. Rigaud QC, Quebec. Is QC Quebec?
Yeah.
Jean-Francois? Anyhow, it's a good question. It's in Oka, QC, Canada, next village. Oka is famous for its abbey. Okay. We've got a rather fairly pretty little cathedral here in Helena. What are we doing this week? We're going to be here in town most of the week this weekend. We should be out in the field again. As a general rule, we're out in the field on the weekends. Depending upon what it takes to fix the quad. And it doesn't look like it's going to be difficult being a stripped, what do you call it, a hub. I'd say at worst case scenario, they just weld it. You know? It's not exactly a high-speed vehicle. If the splines don't hold, the weld will. They discovered that the cellars of the Abbey have 10,000 becquerel of radon, which acted on the bacterial environment of the cheese, giving it its unique taste.
Really?
Well, how about that?
Radioactive cheese?
Well, or at least stored in a radioactive vault. Oh, my goodness. If I'm not mistaken, 10,000 becquerel is pretty good, but I may be wrong. Just wear respirators, I guess, huh? Glow-in-the-dark cheese. What'll they think of next? Man, Eva wants some, I'm sure.
No. Cheese is not supposed to glow in the dark. Just say it.
Okay, Jimmy, what's on the board behind me? Let me move the board over here so it's easier to see. This was an illustration of the ball mill. Oh, that's dated. So let's basically, this new one we're working on has a lot of coarser gold than what we've been dealing with. And therefore, this is an example of it's a VDR sluice. It's got the sawtooth mat on top and then these little vortex wells and little troughs and this, that, and the other. And the idea was take the fine ore out of the pulverizing circuit, run it through a sluice, and then onto the pad, and use solution instead of water. Use the Eco Goldex solution. And the concept is that whatever gold is not recovered in the sluice is fine enough that it should dissolve pretty well with the Eco Goldex. We'll have to test all that. To the material we found. I found, or are you talking about Jimmy's material? Come on. Yeah. Little one.
Yeah.
Take a look. Petzite, Heshite, or Hessite. We're not seeing any of the cubes. What we're seeing is really fractal, much like in picture one, that gold on the left side.
Yeah.
That looks more like what we're getting.
Or like right there. I saw.
Well, even that's not nearly as fractal as most of them, in my opinion.
So what is it? What do we do with it?
What do we do with it? Well, that's a loaded question. Gold, Hessite, and Petzite. Is that gold Telluride, Chris?
I don't want to try to assay it.
Sylvanite and calaverite. Yeah, telluride minerals.
I don't want to try to assay
Possibly.
it if it's a Telluride.
I'm not asking you to assay it. I just want you to smelt it down.
I'm worried about smelting it down.
Oh, well. What's the best way to smelt down a telluride? Just look it up in your assay manual, little one. It'll tell you what to do with tellurides.
Actually, it doesn't address it. It's not part of the beginning thing. I can look it up and I will look it up and mess with it later, Bear. You can stop sighing.
Fire assay tellurides. Fire assay for gold determines only 44% of the gold contained in the ore. Okay. Wet and crucible fire methods for the assay of gold telluride ores. Yeah. Provide due corrections are made for slags, etc. Okay. There's lots of stuff here right there in the very first pages. Treatment of gold telluride ores.
I said I will
So
look
it should
in my
be
books
easy.
the next time I'm at the lab.
So it shouldn't be too hard. Well, that's what I said. Jimmy, if you know ball mills that were used for milling gold-containing ore, you might see about tearing the liners out and seeing how much gold is still in them. That can be a very profitable endeavor. Gold tends to get trapped in ball mills. You know, I don't need a ball mill. Someone was talking about it. But one thing I was mentioning was the gold tends to get trapped in the ball mills and not be able to get out. So if you do find a ball mill that was used at a gold mine, then quite often it's a good idea to, if you can buy it for like scrap iron prices, you buy it, take it apart, clean it thoroughly, and then sell it for scrap iron prices. So it's kind of a crapshoot, but I say if it was milling good gold containing ore, it can have a lot of gold in one of those mills. Yeah, I'd say that's the question as to, do they want them as a mill or do they want them as a piece of scrap iron or whatever? You might even, if you think you can talk with the owner reasonably well, you might work out a deal where, okay, we'll tear it apart, clean it out, and split anything found by a particular formula. Depends on what he thinks of his ball mill. Do you think they're just a pile of iron, or do they think they're valuable processing machinery, or whatever? It would depend on the psychology of the situation. But say that's one of those things that there are times when it becomes pretty profitable to sell apart an old mill. Oh, Rock Butcher said he and his daughter got 3.5 ounces of gold out of one.
Yeah, he said something like that.
It was 3.5 ounces. But that's how big are they? So it would just depend on the situation. Oh. Do you ever go into Butte, Jimmy? If you do, you might take some of that mineral to the Mines and Mineral Resources people over there at Montana Tech and see if somebody will take a look at it and give you a professional opinion. That's another thing too. I mean, you're less than 100 miles. I think you're what, 40 miles maybe from Butte, something like that. Not very far, maybe 50. But that was, when I used to live in Tucson towards the beginning, they had the uh, Arizona Geological Survey office there, and I could just walk in and a PhD geologist would look at my samples. That was really nice. Then they and did some economizing, and but that's one way you can usually get a good professional opinion for free, is just ask at a place like that. I mean, that's their job, is to help people, so shouldn't be too much of a problem. That's what I would do, because then you got someone who really knows what he's looking at. It's nice when you can use local resources like that. Okay, Chris sent something else up here. Collaborate. Okay, those look a lot more crystalline. I don't know, I mean, it's very pretty, that one in the middle, the iridescence and stuff. But again, the stuff we got is very fractal. And I'm not sure if that's due to the impact milling process or whether it's the natural shape of the mineral. Let's see, and this is Krenerite.
So it may be a telluride then.
Yeah, possible. Yeah, there's a lot of different tellurides, depending on how much tellurium to how much gold and the crystal form it takes and things like that. Probably oxidation states and who the hell knows what else. You know, it just makes different crystal structures and different amounts of gold. So some are more yellow, some are more silver. Could it be a broken down crystal? No, it looks malleable. I mean, it's got these weird pointy things sticking out, like, well, say if you shoot a bullet into a hard surface, you wind up with these fragments that have got thin, twisted things sticking out. Enhanced specimens, bright silvery white color is exhibited by a number of other minerals, usually insufficient for. The simplest test is the cherry red color imparted to hot concentrated sulfuric acid by a fragment of a telluride mineral. But writers found that with very small amounts of material, the test is not always reliable. Unknown microchemical analysis is then used. Okay. Gold and silver are so nearly identical in position. Usually. Lead telluride, collaborite, color light yellow to pinkish white, hardness C, strongly anisotropic, polarization colors. Nitric acid effervesces faintly. Surface stains either creamy brown or iridescent, then black. Light pinkish gray. Yeah. Heshite. Nitric acid, most specimens quickly stain black. Looks like you can put it in nitric acid and get some interesting reactions. Most areas negative, stains iridescent. Huh. Interesting. Tellurium. Anyhow, okay, so let me star that one there. Thank you, Chris. We'll see. Um, but yeah, I say it's not like a shattered crystal. It's more like splattered metal. They've got these thin stuffs that are twisted out there and not well supported. And again, I can't tell if that's from the impact mill. My impact mill generally balls them up. Dendritic, yeah, sort of like, but dendritic is, I think of as more regular, and this is just completely irregular. Um, you might describe it as dendritic. I think of it as fractal because it just goes in weird directions and does weird things.
It looks like somebody took thin gold leaf and crumpled it like paper.
Yeah. If you heard that, Eva says like somebody took thin gold leaf and crumpled it like paper. You know, and say it doesn't look like a broken crystal. It doesn't look brittle. It looks malleable. But I'm not sure. So we'll have to check it out. Again, we got some tests to do. What's new? Uh, do you know um, if it will amalgamate, Chris? Any idea? Uh, that might be another probative test. But it's some pretty stuff. Let's see if we can't get some pictures of it. Problem is they're all so small. The biggest chunks are like 40 mesh under just moderate magnification. Um, the biggest chunks, even under a 10 power loop, look pretty interesting. But you put them under that 40 power little pen microscope, and they get pretty dramatic. It'll be a while before I can actually start going into that, if at all. Jean-Francois says, if you release tellurium, it seems darn toxic. See Wikipedia. Okay? Use caution, little one.
Well, that's kind of one of the things I'm a little concerned about.
So, I say we shall see. We shall see. I got a bunch of those soil samples to check. Yep, you take care, Jimmy. Don't overwork yourself. And say if you can take a sample to Butte sometime, that might work out pretty good. First, I got to get a way to haul out the muck. And that'll take a little bit of work. We've got limited time before snow falls and things like that. Okay, Jean-Francois, you take care. It's not that, honey bunny. I don't need to move 150 tons. I need to move about 5 tons a short distance by hand without building roads and stuff like that. Shouldn't be hard, but it's not something that's going to happen in an hour. And we've got limited time right now before snow starts falling, and we got lots of things to get done. So it's all a matter of priorities. If I had only one thing to do, if that was it, I could probably do it in 2 or 3 days, no problem. I've also got another adit I'd like to get to. I got all kinds of things I need to do. So I can't do anything substantial. Exactly. Eva's doing a bunch of samples. I got to pan those. You got to fix vehicles. I got the oil leak on the truck that needs, the parts on the way. The radiator on the Caravan needs to be fixed. It just all takes time. I'm just overwhelmed. There's only so much I can do. And hell, Sunday, we were up at it at 8:30 in the morning, and I got home, 7:30 at night. That's a long day when you're working hard. So that's about it. I say I'd like to get in there, but I need to get a lot of dirt moved in. It's not the getting in, because the whole bottom I can see is filled. So I got to be able to dig all of that out to be able to see what the heck was going in there. It's not just getting over a little hump and then crawling through. It's going to be a lot more extensive than that. Yep, pretty much. So, as I say, we'll get on it. Tomorrow, first thing I got to do is get parts. And supposed to be some stuff coming in this weekend. Let's see something here. Amazon orders. When's that line? I think that was going to be here Friday. The oil line's supposed to be here Friday. So, see what happens that. I think, as a general rule, you could probably go faster just by having someone drive the quad back and forth than actually using a winch, just from the speed of movement. But I don't know. I'd say making the slusher, the cables, and everything else, and then getting it in place would probably take more time than it would to just muck it out by hand. But there's so much testing I got to do. And a lot of crushing and sieving and panning and some assaying, and oh my gosh, it's just a bit overwhelming right now, but that's okay. I'll make it work. Anyhow, anyone else got any questions here before we call it a night? It's so there's just a lot of little stuff needs doing. Yeah. Well, and I don't have permits to use a track loader there either. Insignificant disturbance hand tools is a whole different ball of wax. So you'd be surprised what an old geezer can do with a pick and shovel and a wheelbarrow. If you give him just a little bit of time. I can move some dirt. Did the dump material have good quantity? That reminds me of something I need to check. There's different grades of stuff. Let me... There's a quartz 0.6. Because grade, of course, makes a huge difference in terms of the tonnage that's useful. And that was that one. There's another assay sheet Oh my goodness. Gotta go through this and throw out the excess paper. Well, not throw them out, set it off to the side. Okay, nothing there. I take a lot with me in the field now. But it doesn't mean I can necessarily go through it quickly. Not there. Well, where did I put that? What fun. There we go. That was crap. That was decent, but I'm not sure how much of that is. That was kind of a mix. That didn't do too well. I'm probably going to have to do some more sampling on that to get a good idea of the tonnage. Not as much as I'd originally hoped because it seems to be somewhat segregated. And I'm not sure how the lower grade stuff runs, especially how well I can upgrade it. I took one test sample this trip that I'm hoping will upgrade well simply by screening. And if it does, then there's a fair amount of material there, 3 or 4 tons. I can only pull maybe 1 ton per weekend by the time I dig it, haul it, and bring it home. Well, I don't need to slide it downhill. I need to haul it 60 miles. Classifying, just screening it. And a lot of times you get a good upgrade when you screen it because the gold tends to be for testing only at this point, Honey Bunny. The larger quartz seems to work, but the not larger, if it's not quartz, the wall rock, generally no. And so, yeah, and we'll see when the snow flies. Last year, I think, what is the 18th? Yeah, if things happen like they did last year, we got maybe 4 weeks before we're out of there for the season. So we want to try and get what we need to get done quickly. And then Montana B is at a lower elevation, and we can focus more on there. But I have enough for some good testing already. We want to get some more material, but we prefer to get as good a material as possible. And so that's it. It just takes a lot of work. And so just got a lot of stuff to do in a short period of time. Plus all the living stuff too, things like we need to buy groceries in between trips, stuff like that. Today, Eva had a couple doctor's appointments. We did some shopping. We got laundry done and got home here. Then I had to deal with some mechanical issues, and I got back here, what, about 4:50?
Yeah.
Something like that. So anyhow, I will get back at it tomorrow morning, probably leave the house about 9 o'clock and get started on the first task of the day. But I should have a lot of those soil samples that Eva took panned by about noon. Hopefully I'll have them all panned by noon, but she likes to be there taking notes while I'm actually doing the panning. Yeah, I've got external constraints. I say things like I got to go get a jaw plate, and I think it needed to be re-hard faced too. So I may have to re-hard face a couple of jaw plates, and there's a half a day gone. Um, but then I'll, you know, Crusher will be ready to go for probably the rest of the season. They should last that long. But yeah, just one thing after another. And I pretty much got to do it myself because Lauren's working right now. And a lot of these things are things even it can't do. I mean, I'm sure that given enough time, she could learn fairly quickly how to weld. She's never given any indications she wants to learn how to weld.
I wouldn't mind, but it's not your equipment.
Oh, I've got a buzz box. I've got my equipment. You know, yeah, I don't touch Lauren's welders either. You know, and so I say it's one of those things. Well, since nobody had any questions or whatever, I better call it a night so I can get some rest, so I can hit it first thing in the morning. Yeah, I'm not sure how many welders Lauren has. I know he's got a plasma cutter. He's got an oxyacetylene torch. He's got a big wire feed. He's got a small wire feed. I know at least one of his can do TIG. I've seen him do TIG before, for example, and like that. Thanks, Jeff. Um, it should be a little more straightforward this week. And Eva's doing a great job getting more samples and stuff. Hopefully, we'll get some more hits. And then that also adds to the complexity because now we got to get other bulk samples so that when the snow flies, we can still continue to do research. So we shall see what we shall see. Yeah, it's not that hard, honey bunny. The trickiest thing I have is I've got one eye, that functions. And so it's hard to see exactly what's going on with the weld when it's that bright and everything. It's hard to focus on it. So I have real trouble seeing what I'm doing. And that makes it even a little more interesting. It makes my welds a little more complex than what you would call a quality welder. Anyhow, okay. Well, I guess I'm going to call it a night here and everything. And you guys take care. Happy prospecting and keep it safe out there.